very long to do this ceremony. As you can see, the airport barricaded it all for us, and even provided us a PA. It seems sort of strange to be speaking in the PA with you guys right here in front of me. My name is Jim Holder, as I'm sure most of y'all know, but it's written here, so I got to say it. And I'm a retired Eastern Airlines captain. Also up here today are Captain Jim Gardner, Jerry Frost, and Bob Crowley. Many of the Eastern family are here. Also, some still able to get into their uniforms, like Brian Settles wearing an ATA uniform over there. Kip Meadmore, slightly out of uniform, no coat Kip. Sid Lanier, Jay Allen, Chuck Bolton with a non-standard Eastern hairdo and ponytail. Jack Van Ness, Jerry Carlson, Johnny Johnson just got here. We waited till you were arrived before we started. And Hoyt Davis. We would like to thank all of you folks for coming out for the dedication of the new Eastern Pilot Memorial. As you can see, the two frames of the memorial are quite large and now contain 6,744 names. Those being all the pilots and flight engineers who flew for Eastern prior to March 4th, 1989. Today is the final step in a long road that began in 1977 with REPA, the Retired Eastern Pilots Association, placing a smaller version of the frame on your left over there in the lobby of the James Hartley Training Center in Miami. This small frame was approximately 2 feet by 4 feet in size and held the first few caskets, which were the names of all Eastern pilots and flight engineers who had flown west prior to 1977. Many of these pilots had flown for Pitcairn Aviation, formed on September the 15th, 1927, later known as Eastern Air Transport, and of course later known as Eastern Airlines. For those of you who haven't seen the original memorial, this is one of the caskets. Actually, you can see the pictures of it here that we removed. It's 1981. Some of them are very big and very heavy. I got a small one since I was going to wave it around up here. Very quickly, though, the passing of additional Eastern pilots required a much larger frame, so again, the frame to your left was installed in place of the much smaller one. Then in 1990, louder? Okay, louder. Okay. Very quickly, the passing of the additional Eastern pilots required a much larger frame, so this frame to your left was installed in place of the smaller one I just mentioned. Then in 1990, that memorial, with all its cast tablets, was moved to its present location right here in the north terminal of the Atlanta Airport. We continued to place additional castings on the frame, and in 1992, it too was full, so a much larger frame was put up, that being one on your right. But again, the passing of so many Eastern pilots filled that new frame up to the extent that we had no room for those who died in 2008 or years thereafter. So at that time we ceased making the castings for the memorial. As you can see right down there, this picture made, the two pictures actually filled up over to about right there, and that little small portion was all that was left, and we could not get 2008 on there, so we no longer made any castings. When this memorial was taken down, the tablets had 1,654 names on it, and with a total weight of 275 pounds. At this time, we haven't decided what we're going to do with those tablets. We were now in a quandary as to how to proceed, simply because Eastern ceased to exist in the early 90s, thereby stopping the influx of new members of REPA. Therefore, removing our ability to continue to finance an ongoing memorial for our pilots who were still passing on at the rate of about 85 per year. Also, an earlier remodeling of this wall took place. The granite was put in here, and the airport would not let us put an additional frame up, even if we could afford it, which we could not. Many ideas were considered by REPA Board of Directors over about a 5-year period. However, we finally agreed on a suggestion by Jerry Frost, our REPA treasurer, that being, since eventually all of us would have our names on that memorial, to just simply go ahead and place everybody's name on it right now. And as REPA had sufficient funds in the bank to do that, we decided to go ahead and finance it, and we did it. It is not the REPA Memorial, it is the Eastern Airlines Pilots Memorial. Let me be very clear about that. Now compiling a list of all Eastern pilots going back to day one sounds like an easy thing to do, but believe me, it was not. We had to research all records, seniority lists, names. Turned out to be a major task. So once again, we turned to Jerry Frost with a hope that he, with his computer skills, would do it for us, and he did. And now to talk more about what Jerry Frost did, you're going to ask Jim Gardner to come up and take over. I will be back after Jerry talks, and then I'll be back with the final word on the dedication. Jim Gardner.
Well, as one of the younger retired Eastern pilots, I know it's hard to believe that I'm actually retired. I did want to add a few words, and JB touched on it. This memorial is, while it was being taken care of by Retired Eastern Pilots Association, this memorial belongs to the memories of all Eastern pilots, and it is paid for out of the individual donations of all Eastern pilots for this. REPA just happened to supply the seed money so that we could complete the operation. There's so much more that we can do, but there's so much history that's right here in this memorial. It is a reminder of the immense contribution that Eastern pilots made to the development of a transportation system that has become the safest and best in the world. That many of the pilots on this plaque are true pioneers. They gave a lot to the Eastern pilot. They gave us a blueprint to follow, that blueprint of professionalism, integrity, and character, for which some of us and all airline pilots to this day have emulated and carry on. Every industry needs an anchor, and the pilots, and especially the pilots at Eastern Airlines, provided that anchor not only for our airline, but for all pilots to follow. I have to say this, that this whole memorial would not be here today if it wasn't for Jerry Frost. There are many people who contributed to this, time and effort, and lots of us have given money, but Jerry provided the energy to take on the monumental task of the single biggest problem that we had in completing this, and that is culminating all the names of the Eastern pilots, for the simple reason, before the age of electronics, everything was done by hand. All the seniority lists had to be gathered, and it was just a monumental task, and it was the single roadblock in completing this. Without Jerry's help and without Jerry's perseverance and his persistence, this is a project that would just have never been completed. And Jerry took it further and has worked with the airport authority and tried to help us perpetuate this. There's no guarantee that this is going to be remain. If this lobby ever gets remodeled, we have an additional thing. So our task really isn't ended. However, a big part of it has just been completed. And while JB and I have always been prone to diction, and Jerry has always been a man of few words, and he has been a quiet force behind the REPA board and this effort to get this done. And I would like to personally thank him for all your effort in doing this, and I would like to ask you to give him a round of applause. Jerry, I know you're a man of few words, but please share with us some of the problems and your thoughts on this.
I'll try to talk a little louder if I can. Yes, I am a man of few words, as you can see by my notes right here, so I'll be brief because I know everybody's getting tired standing. But I really want to thank the Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport for their cooperation. I want to thank Mr. Lewis E. Miller. He's the Aviation General Manager of Hartsfield. I want to thank Katina Fabialis. She's the public relations that's helped set this up this morning. I want to thank Jason Miles back here. He's with the terminal maintenance that was instrumental in helping us put the plaques up. Randy Adams, who's with us, was instrumental also putting the plaques up and getting the manpower here to do it, which I'll explain in a minute. And we have been assured by Mr. Miller that our plaque does have a permanent place here at Hartsfield, even though the north terminal at some point is scheduled to be remodeled. The memorial plates will be taken down but relocated somewhere in the terminal in a prominent position. So we can look forward to many years of our memorial being here. The task started a little about a year ago when the idea was to, the fact that Eastern does not exist anymore, and we're running out of space, is that let's go ahead and put all of the names of the pilots up. Because like the Doolittle's Raiders and the few that remain, who's going to be the last one to drink the brandy, who's going to be the last one named to go on the plate. So let's put everybody up now. So it was finally voted upon by the pilots to undertake such a task. So it began a little over a year ago. The job then was, where do we get all of the names through the history dating back to 1928 when this was Pitcairn. So we started gathering seniority lists from all of the decades. We had a little problem with the 1950s. Unfortunately, evidently, no seniority lists exist in the 1950s because we put the word out and none could be found. So there are pilots that came and went with Eastern in the 50s that probably will not appear on the plates. But we've tried the best to put everybody's name on that we could possibly find. Some have slipped through our fingers, I'm sure, but this is a good representation of the 6,744 names. The next task after gathering the seniority list was how do we get it into digital form? And at one point I put the word out asking for volunteers who could type, that I would give them certain parts of the seniority list, and a few of them did accept. Jerry Johnson was one, as I recall. But then I started thinking how long that would take, because when you take the seniority list and overlap them through the decades, you're not just talking about data entering one set of seniority list or one seniority list, but many of them. So I engaged the services of a data entry company up in Ohio, and they went to work and they typed in over 17,000 names representing multiple seniority lists for us in record time, within 2 weeks. They were fast typists, as you can imagine. They would send me the names and then a data form. I would put them all together, had to sort them out, look for duplicates, and finally came up with a final list. We did it one time several months ago, one of the issues of our magazine, sent a supplement out with all of the names that we had and asked for any corrections, additions, anybody we missed, and the ones that did respond, of course, we corrected. So once that was completed, the next task, what do we do with the names now? So I was able to find a bronze company up in New York City, up in Long Island, called the United States Bronze. And they had the equipment and the technology to cut these plates to our specifications. I want to add that these plates are 1/4 of an inch thick. This one weighs approximately 250 pounds. This one is about 200 pounds. And we only had the confines of the frames, as you see. So we had them cut the plates and gave them a list of names, and they did the rest. They did the magic within about 2 weeks, and all of a sudden these plates now were on a truck heading for Atlanta. It was about 3 weeks ago. Bob Droddy in his good old faithful old pickup truck and myself, and it was literally a dark and stormy night. We met here and we drove over to Moreland Avenue in the rain at night to find the trucking terminal, which we finally did. And they produced on a forklift this huge crate with the 2 frames inside. And now I'm starting to think, how are we going to get it in this pickup truck? Will the pickup truck hold all of that weight? Because we didn't really know how much these weighed at the time. But as it turned out, The guy with the pitchfork, or the forklift, was able to slide it perfectly into his back of his pickup with about a half an inch on each side to spare, thank goodness. And if anybody deserves credit, it's Bob Drawdy's old pickup truck, because these plates had to sit in the back of his pickup for about 3 weeks. He had to drive around South Metro until we could finally pull up at the door here and bring him in. Rolling ahead, the night finally came about a week ago, where we met here at about 10 o'clock at night when things were quieted down, and Randy Adams provided the manpower, and we had the equipment and the men, and they went out and brought them in. And this was really the first time we had seen the plates. We did get a little sneak preview of them in his pickup truck. We removed the top of one and could see just a portion of the names and said, boy, they did a good job. So anyway, we unloaded them out here at the door, North 5, and used a drywall conveyor to bring them in. And now you talk about a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I was sitting over against that wall watching these 4 strong people lift this one up, put it in place. And it fit like a glove. Thank God. We sighed a big relief that it actually fit in its frame, because we didn't know what we'd do if the bronze company had mismeasured. But anyway, we patched them, and this was easy because it's a little bit smaller. That went into place, and literally within the hour, the memorial was up. So here we stand today with all of that. The job is complete, and I can go home and relax. But I thank you. I didn't do it alone. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and especially the ones that can sit in their uniforms. And in closing, I just want to say, as you'll all remember, when this terminal opened up September 21st, 1980, that we moved over from the old terminal, and I think it was a few days before they actually opened it up. They let us come in to get used to the terminal. We got to go over to the seat concourse, to our operations, just get a feel for the airport, so when we came to work in the next couple of days, we wouldn't be lost. So here we stand today, how many years later, in uniform, and boy, you bring back memories just looking out at these Eastern uniforms. And I thank you all for coming, and there's your names.
As I said earlier, we said this is the dedication of the new Bronze Memorial. Even though over half of those who flew Eastern Airlines are still alive and well, we, including those pilots here today, and those many who are not, wish that this be a living memorial to the 6,744 Eastern pilots who flew in and out of the Atlanta airport hundreds of thousands of times. We were the first airline in December of 1930 to fly passengers out of the Atlanta airport, and we played a very, very large role in making Atlanta airport what it is today. So today, December the 14th, 2011, we dedicate this living bronze memorial to all 6,744 pilots who flew for Eastern. Their names are there. Thank you for coming. Would anyone like to make a comment or anything of that nature? We don't have